Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're digging into some ideas that honestly might push back against things we often take for granted, especially relevant if you're, in your 20s or maybe just looking back.
Exactly. Yeah, we're looking at excerpts from this chapter called Expectations You Must Let Go of in Your 20s. And it's pretty direct, kind of a tough love approach to assumptions we carry.
Right. And what we want to do today is really unpack these 17 expectations. That's what the source calls them. We want to get into why this text argues letting them go might be, well, not just helpful, but maybe even crucial for a more, grounded life.
Yeah, it's about looking at success, happiness, life itself, maybe through a slightly different, less common lens.
And look, some of these points might feel a bit uncomfortable. They definitely challenge some popular narratives.
For sure. But the source seems to suggest that facing these alternative views can actually lead to some pretty big shifts in how you experience everything.
Okay, so let's get into it. Prepare to have some widely held beliefs questioned, and let's explore what this material offers.
Let's do it.
All right, first one up. Expectation number one. The source says we need to ditch this idea that you are somehow meant to be extraordinary.
Yeah, and the source right away kind of hits you with the reality check. Extraordinary people are, by definition, rare, like statistically rare.
It challenges that constant pressure, that one in a billion success story narrative we see everywhere.
It argues that, chasing that external label of extraordinary can actually distract you from just being fully yourself, dissolving into who you are, warts and all.
So what's the alternative view here?
Well, the source flips the script. Instead of asking, how can I be extraordinary to the world, it poses questions like, what work would you do even if no one was watching? Like, what feels worthwhile even if it's totally unacknowledged? And also, how can you feel deeply loved by just a few people, your core people, instead of needing validation from the masses?
That's a big shift. Finding the exceptional in the ordinary, not necessarily becoming the exception, it focuses on internal meaning over external status. Why do you think that one's so tough for people?
Well, I think, modern culture just constantly throws exceptionalism at us. Social media especially. Everyone's highlight reel.
Right.
The source is kind of cutting through that, saying, hey, that's not the norm, and it's not the only path to a meaningful life. It takes courage, I think, to find value outside that constant external applause.
Absolutely. And speaking of tough realities, the second expectation is maybe even more stark. This assumption that you're just in the beginning of your life.
Oof, yeah. The source is really blunt here. It basically reminds us that, life isn't guaranteed. Not everyone makes it through their 20s or even this year.
Wow, that's intense. It even mentions the idea of keeping a skull on your desk.
Oh.
Memento mori.
Right. It's meant to be jarring, I think. The point isn't to be morbid, but to shake us out of assuming we have infinite time.
Like nobody expects to die young.
Exactly. But the source says that belief doesn't change the reality that it happens. It's about appreciating the urgency and the preciousness of now.
Makes sense. It forces you to think about how you're using the time you do have, rather than banking on some endless future.
Which leads kind of naturally into the third expectation.
Yeah.
This tendency to think our own faults are somehow more forgivable, while our good qualities are more exceptional than other people's.
Oh, that's a subtle one. The source calls it a mindset that keeps you small, a kind of self-bias.
Yeah, precisely. And it gives two key reasons why it's limiting. First, if you don't honestly acknowledge your mistakes or shortcomings, you're essentially bound to justify doing them again. You can't fix what you won't see clearly.
Okay, that makes sense. And the second reason?
Second, if you secretly believe you're slightly better or can just slide by without maximum effort, you'll probably never actually try to reach your real potential. You settle.
So it's about applying the same standard of honesty to yourself that you'd apply to others, getting rid of that internal double standard.
Exactly. Radical self-honesty.
Okay, moving to number 4. This is a big one we hear all the time. You can literally be whatever you want.
And the source just says, nope, pretty much flat out. It uses examples like, you can't just decide to be a rocket scientist tomorrow if you don't have the aptitude, the IQ, the training.
Or a pro dancer without the coordination.
Right. The source argues that just wanting something really, really badly isn't enough. It doesn't magically qualify you. It pushes back hard against that pure willpower narrative.
So what does the source say is possible then?
It suggests something more grounded. If you combine, say, hard work, persistence, and you have facilitating circumstances like maybe some innate talent or external opportunities, then you might land somewhere that crosses your abilities with your interests.
Ah, okay. So it's about the intersection of effort, actual aptitude, and circumstance, not just wishful thinking.
Exactly, and it adds a layer. If you do have intelligence or talent, the source suggests being grateful for it, even when things are tough, recognizing it's not just a given baseline for being whatever you want.
That feels much more realistic than the sort of manifest anything vibe. Okay, expectation 5. Believing you can outsmart pain.
Yeah, the source is very clear here. You cannot think your way out of pain. It's not a logic puzzle.
You can't predict it, avoid it perfectly, or just, pretend it doesn't hurt or affect you.
Right. And the source argues that trying to do that, trying to intellectualize or bypass pain, means you end up living a fraction of the life you were meant to. You become a fraction of the person you're supposed to be.
Because pain is part of the deal, part of what shapes us.
That seems to be the view. It's not a system error to be fixed, but a fundamental part of the human experience that teaches us things if we let ourselves actually feel it.
Okay, that resonates. Trying to use logic on emotion often just backfires.
Totally. And related to deep experiences, Expectation 6 offers this really interesting, almost backward perspective. The belief that love is something other people give you.
This one really made me pause. The source points out how we're also utterly consumed with getting other people to love us, romantically, socially, professionally.
And the source's take is that this whole chase is basically a mind game. We're waiting for someone else's nod, their approval, their affection, to give ourselves permission to actually feel love.
So the feeling is already inside us, but we think we need external validation to unlock it. Is that the idea?
That's exactly it. And the really powerful, maybe challenging takeaway from the source is, if you keep thinking love exists anywhere but within your own mind and heart, you will never have it.
Wow. That puts the power and the responsibility squarely back on the individual. It's an internal state, not an external commodity.
A huge shift from seeking it outside to cultivating it inside.
Okay, building on feelings. Expectation 7. If you feel something really intensely, it must mean it's meant to be.
Ah, yes, the intensity destiny myth. The source directly challenges this.
He uses examples like, feeling a super strong calling to be famous doesn't magically grant you the talent or the resilience needed.
Or feeling completely, utterly sure about a marriage when you say, I do, doesn't guarantee it won't end in divorce later. Intensity isn't destiny insurance.
So if intense feelings aren't the sign of meant to be in that fairy tale way, what is, according to the source?
Well, it offers a different definition. It says things like breakups, getting fired, feeling hurt, major disappointments. Those are the things that are meant to be.
Why? Just because they happen a lot.
Partly that, yeah. They're common human experiences. But more importantly, the source calls them the most pivotal redirects. They're not failures of the plan. They're the unexpected turns that force us onto different, often necessary paths.
That completely reframes setbacks.
Yeah.
And the source links this to letting go of that perfect final picture you have for your life.
Exactly. It argues holding on to that rigid fantasy will never exist the way you think it should anyway, and it makes you waste the present by constantly comparing it to this ideal that isn't real.
And the final thought on this one is pretty sobering.
Yeah. There's only one final destination here. The only thing you're rushing toward is the end of your life. Everything else is just the process unfolding.
Wow. Ties back to that mortality point. Focus on the now. Okay, speaking of process, expectation 8. If you work on yourself enough, the struggle will just disappear.
Right. The personal growth fantasy of reaching a struggle-free nirvana.
Yeah. But the source offers a much simpler, maybe more profound correction.
It does. It just says if you work on yourself enough, you'll understand what the struggle is for.
Not eliminate it, but understand its purpose.
Exactly. Struggle isn't a sign you failed at self-help. It's a fundamental part of living. The work helps you find meaning within the struggle, not escape it entirely. The goal shifts from eradication to understanding.
That feels more sustainable and validating. Okay, number 9. You can control what other people think of you.
Oh, this is a huge source of anxiety for so many people, right? Especially now. The source clarifies. What you can control is how you behave, how you treat people, your actions.
But the uncontrollable part.
What they actually think or feel about you in response, that's entirely theirs.
The source calls trying to manipulate their opinion a delusion. right?
Yeah.
Like being a puppeteer.
Yeah, puppeteering through your life, constantly adjusting your performance based on what you think they want to see.
And the problem with that is,
It distances you from who you genuinely are. Because, as the source points out, people are going to judge, admire, criticize, misunderstand you anyway, based on their own subjective perceptions, regardless of how hard you try to manage their view.
so trying to control it is futile and compromises your authenticity.
Pretty much. It's freeing, in a way, to let that go and just focus on acting with integrity according to your own values.
Yeah, liberation. Okay, next, expectation 10. Hard work guarantees success.
Another classic expectation. The source injects realism again. It says, look, if you tie your definition of success to one specific outcome, like that promotion, that specific salary, that relationship, hard work alone isn't a guarantee. You'll likely be disappointed sometimes.
Because there were just too many other factors at play. Luck, timing, other people.
Exactly. So the source shifts the focus. The real point, the reliable value of hard work, isn't what it gets you externally. It's about recognizing the person it makes you.
The internal changes, discipline, resilience, skills.
Right. That part, the character you build, the person you become through the effort, that's what you can influence and rely on. The specific external trophy? Not so much.
That puts the value back on the process and the internal development. Okay, number 11. Your thoughts will automatically change when your circumstances change.
This is so common. We think, oh, once I find a partner, then I'll feel worthy. Or once I make more money, then I'll feel secure.
Assuming the external shift fixes the internal state.
But the source argues it's actually the other way around. It uses money as an example. When you first adopt a new mindset about money, maybe focusing on gratitude or responsibility or abundance, then you start acting differently with it.
And those different actions lead to changes in your financial situation.
That's the idea. The internal shift in thinking comes first and drives the behavioral changes that then impact the external reality. The source puts it bluntly, your mind creates, it is not created.
Mindset dictates reality, not the other way around. That's powerful. And it connects right into expectation 12. Other people are responsible for your feelings.
Yeah, this idea that someone else made you feel angry or sad or offended, the source gets practical here. It says, look, the only place you really control what's said is maybe inside your own house.
Step outside and you're in a world full of different people, different opinions. It's inevitable someone will say something that rubs you the wrong way or offends you.
Right. And the source argues that expecting everyone else to manage your feelings leads to a very difficult life. You end up thinking you're the center of everyone's world, taking every comment personally, assigning negative intent where maybe there isn't any.
So what's the alternative response when you feel offended or upset by someone?
The source suggests it's not about getting more outraged. Trying to change people's minds or behavior isn't best achieved through anger.
It's more about
It's about your willingness to explain, teach, and share your perspective calmly. It's about communication, not demanding emotional compliance. And it uses that striking phrase. Defensiveness never precedes growth, it stunts it. Getting defensive just shuts down understanding.
That's huge for navigating disagreements. Okay, 13 is a cluster. It reframes emotional intelligence, self-esteem, and happiness away from common, often unhelpful ideals.
Right. The source tackles these idealized definitions and offers more realistic, workable ones.
Let's take them one by one. Emotional intelligence first. It's not about always being calm and composed.
No. The source defines it as the ability to feel, express, and interpret your feelings productively. It's about skillful engagement with emotions, not suppression of them.
Okay. And self-esteem. It's not believing you're perfect or always good.
Definitely not. It's defined as believing you're worthy of loving and being loved despite not being supremely, completely good all of the time. It integrates flaws and imperfection into your sense of worthiness.
That's crucial. Worthiness isn't conditional on perfection.
Yeah.
And happiness, not the absence of problems.
Correct. Happiness is presented as a product of how you cope with your problems and whether or not you see them as the opportunities they are.
So happiness comes from your response to challenges, not the elimination of challenges.
Exactly. It's an internal outcome of navigating life's difficulties well.
These redefinitions feel much more achievable. Okay, number 14, another big one. The right person or the right opportunity will show up when you are ready.
The source is pretty blunt here, too. It argues you will not be ready, period, for most of the big stuff.
Like what kind of stuff?
It lists huge life events. Meeting the love of your life, Landing the dream job, buying a house, having a child, quitting that awful job, writing the book, even getting sick, losing someone close, or facing death, you won't feel 100% perfectly ready for any of it.
And if you wait until you do feel ready,
You'll be waiting forever, the source says. That feeling of perfect preparedness is mostly an illusion. And worse, by waiting, you'll miss the best of what's in front of you. Life happens whether you feel ready or not.
wow, that's a real call to action, to jump in
Yeah.
even when you feel uncertain.
Yeah.
Okay, 15 relates to managing our feelings. You can postpone happiness, like saving money.
Yeah, the source suggests we often do this unconsciously, maybe to feel safe. We think, I can't be happy yet because X, Y, and Z aren't sorted out. We look for problems, obstacles.
Like happiness is a reward you only get once everything is perfect.
Exactly. But the source is very clear. You cannot save up your happiness. It doesn't accumulate in some emotional savings account.
It's an in-the-moment thing.
Right. You either allow yourself to feel it in the moment, whatever joy or peace is available now, or you just miss it. And it reminds us, happiness is temporary anyway. The only question is whether you ever felt it in the first place by letting it in when it arose.
That really puts the focus on experiencing positive emotions now. Okay, 16 tackles anxiety and negative thinking. The expectation is they're just annoying things to get rid of.
Right, things to thwart. But the source offers a different perspective. It argues anxiety isn't just a glitch. It's actually a main driving force that helped our species survive by keeping us alert to danger.
So it serves a purpose. It's not inherently bad.
That's the idea. And if you're struggling with, crippling overabundance of anxiety, the source suggests it might be because you're not listening to it. Or maybe there's a major issue you refuse to address or take action on.
So the anxiety is a signal flare, not just random noise.
Exactly. And it talks about the power of negative thinking, too. Not in a defeatist way, but saying that negative thoughts, while uncomfortable, can actually show us what matters and how we need to respond. They highlight potential problems or things we care about that feel threatened.
So instead of fighting them constantly, we should maybe listen to what the anxiety or negative thoughts are pointing towards.
That's the implication. Reframe them from enemies into potentially valuable, if difficult, messengers.
That's a radical shift in how we relate to our own minds. Okay, last one, 17. Focusing solely on your own needs will make you happiest.
This pushes back against some self-care narratives that can become overly self-focused. The source acknowledges self-sufficiency is vital. It's a precursor to happiness, a necessary foundation.
So taking care of yourself is important.
Absolutely crucial. But the source emphasizes it's not the connectedness on which human beings thrive. Self-sufficiency is the starting point, not the finish line for deep fulfillment.
So what does lead to that deeper sense of a worthwhile life, according to this?
Connection and purpose beyond just yourself. Things like committing, sacrificing, trying and trying again for the people you love and the things you believe in.
So meeting your own needs enables you to then invest in relationships, community, causes, things bigger than just me.
That seems to be the core message. Meeting your own needs is the essential first step, not the ultimate goal.
Wow. Okay. We've covered a lot of ground there. 17 expectations, many of them deeply ingrained, all challenged by this source material. We've touched on success, love, pain, control, happiness.
Yeah, it's really an invitation to critically examine the beliefs we carry around, often unconsciously, and ask if they're actually serving us or maybe limiting how we engage with life as it really is.
Definitely. Hopefully this deep dive has offered you, listening, some new perspectives, new ways to think about the pressures, the possibilities, especially in those formative 20s, but really at any stage.
It certainly presents a different way to navigate things.
So thinking about everything we've discussed, here's a final thought from the source material to maybe mull over. If struggle isn't something to just get rid of, but something you can understand the purpose of, and if those uncomfortable feelings like anxiety or negative thoughts are potentially important signals to listen to, not just annoyances to fight, what does that shift in perspective actually mean for how you approach discomfort or challenge or fear in your own life? What changes if the goal isn't elimination, but understanding? Something to think about.